My name's Andy Brown. I'm the product director here at Cocho. I look after all of our technical product strategy, go-to-market, technical pre-sales, bid management, a few other bits and pieces as part of the overall sales function here at Cocho. And I'm delighted to be joined today by David Leong, who is CTO of the Act Group, who are a distributor for a technology that we'll be demonstrating as part of the discussion here today. So, David, thanks for taking time out of your evening over in Australia for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Good stuff. No problem at all. So in terms of what the plan is for today, I think we've probably done the introductions already. A little bit from me, just to, for those who don't know us, to describe Cocho, and then a bit of scene setting in terms of our view of the world and what we're seeing out there. And then we're handing over to David to demonstrate the solution Macroview. So in terms of setting the scene, and that's setting the scene for this session today, I think what we're seeing is a very common conversation across a lot of organizations. Doesn't really matter what sector they're in. And what we describe is kind of this concept of document sprawl, as I call it now. I think, if you look across Office 365, it's an amazing set of tools for collaboration, obviously the traditional in Outlook, but the way that they've taken SharePoint Online and now layered in Teams, OneDrive, etc. into this means we've got a really capable set of tools for sharing data across the organization. But with that has come some challenges now. And I think one of the key challenges that we're seeing, and we see this even inside Cocho ourselves to an extent, is, what information goes where? When do you use Outlook versus when do you use Teams? When do you share something on SharePoint versus when do you share it on OneDrive? And when you're sharing it in Teams, where is it actually been stored in the back end? All these kind of questions come up quite quickly. And what we often hear from end users is a common conversation of, I know I saw that somewhere. And then there's this whole thing about, now, where is it? And that, did I see that? Did that was shared on SharePoint? Or was that, it might have been a Teams chat, might have been an email, etc. And of course, it's not just M365. For many organizations, there's still the traditional file shares in the mix and all kinds of other various ways of sharing information inside an organization. And that creates an awful lot of user frustration potentially and challenges, but it also creates wider challenges when you actually start to try and apply security on top of some of this stuff. So if you think about, right, how do I classify my data? How do I label it? How do I, how long should I be keeping all this kind of data? So there's a whole mess, if you like, of documents all over the place is kind of the summary for many organizations. Now, I hear some people say, well, it's not that bad, is it? And I think, the simple answer is you can start to take the time that people spend looking for information and turn it into some kind of useful metric. So, for example, this is from an IDC report. The average employee can spend up to 700 hours a year just looking for the right information. Now, that's a staggering statistic, especially if you think about it in terms of organizations that bill by the hour. That's a lot of lost time. And indeed, how long do you actually spend just making sure that you're working on the right version of a document as well? So, is this something that is, have I done an update on an old version? Have I actually pulled data from an old version that's knocking around, whatever it may be? And if you're still using network file shares, you're not alone. A lot of people have still got that kind of mess that they're trying to sort out as well in the background as well. And all of this potentially creates a kind of shadow IT challenge that we've seen for years and years that still hasn't necessarily gone away. Of, if employees don't necessarily know the right way to do things, they sometimes do it the wrong way. And we see all kinds of, file sharing going out through the wrong channels, etc. So these are just some of the common metrics that we see out there. But, ultimately, the answer to a lot of this is something that has been known about and has been deployed for a long time, the concept of document management. And in professional services firms, in particular legal, the concept of the document management system, DMS, is very much something that has been there for some time. That even in legal, though, there is the interesting challenge that the DMS is separate from M365 very often, and quite often we'll see either the DMS isn't deployed to everyone because it's expensive, or indeed there's a whole shadow process where, although it may not be the officially sanctioned way, documents are getting shared, updated outside of the DMS as well. Not saying that that's sanctioned, as I say, but that does happen. And then there's a whole interesting new challenge coming along where you've got M365 Copilot programs, which are ultimately, out of the box. Copilot is there to work across data that's in SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive, etc., because that's what the user has access to. It's not necessarily looking into a third-party data store. And of course, if you're outside of professional services, or you don't have a document management system, then you're in that kind of content chaos ecosystem that I was talking about before. You've got M365 potentially, but you really need some of the capabilities that are built into a DMS, but built on the data inside M365. So that's kind of why we're here today. It's one of those demos that makes great sense when you see it. It's like, okay, that's a really nice solution to the problem. So this is ultimately an overlay onto M365, which gives you DMS-like capabilities, but crucially the data remains on M365 itself. And ultimately it's built around end user experience with great user experience built in. So at this point, probably best to bring it to life. I'll hand over to David. If you could please, David, just take us through and show us Macroview in action.
Thanks, Andy, and welcome all. That was a great segue into the demonstration of Macroview that I'm going to show. Before I do this, I just wanted to re-emphasize a few points that you raised there, Andy, and that's the fact that because Macroview is tightly integrated with the MS365 platform, all the data doesn't move at all, and all the security, rights management, and permissions all stay intact. We can call this a visualization tool that turns all this data and information across all the different repositories into an instant document management system, being tightly integrated with the Microsoft products. Just allow me, I will share my screen, and I'll just remove myself. And I want to take you through just the journey of what the user experience is like today. Andy gave some metrics around this content sprawl, searching for information. Just wanted to run you quickly through what that user experience looks like today in many organizations, and then we'll introduce the Macroview product. So what you're looking at here, I'm a typical user at Cocho, and I have got access to 7 SharePoint sites: company announcements, customer communications, events, human resources, your typical service line SharePoint sites and repositories. And obviously each site contains documents within it that is relevant to that subject matter. So there's all the company announcements here. I won't go through all of them. Human resources, for leave applications, salary information, sick leave forms, and of course, learning and development, where I've got all my knowledge articles, etc., etc. So this makes sense to me as a user looking at 7 SharePoint sites, because every site contains information that's relevant to that subject matter. But it just doesn't stop there, because as a user, I'm also a member of 7 team sites in this scenario. See, I'm on the business development and marketing teams channel, and obviously there's documents and files within that. Crisis communications, again, there's documents there. So again, all these different teams channels have information within it, also relevant to that subject matter. So now we're talking about 14 sites. Along with that, of course, we've got OneDrive. So here's my personal OneDrive. Here's my company OneDrive. Obviously, there's documents that sit within this as well. As Andy articulated, from a user's perspective, I thought I saw this somewhere, but where was it? Was it in Teams? Was it in OneDrive? Was it in SharePoint? Was it in Outlook? This is where this content sprawl across the Microsoft 365 platform starts to create confusion amongst users whilst we're placing information relevant into particular repositories. As we have access to more SharePoint sites, Teams channels, and shared OneDrive sites, this becomes very difficult to navigate from a user's perspective. I've installed Macroview. What I'll bring up now is Outlook, because I tend to live in Outlook all the time because this is where I correspond with all my clients, internal engagements, etc. This is my sample inbox. But you'll notice here on the right-hand panel, I have an Outlook sidebar. So when I expand this sidebar, all the sites that I've been talking about, all the SharePoint sites, company announcements, client communications, events, human resources, are visible on this right-hand panel, and along with all the Teams channels and OneDrive. So if I were to just go into human resources and look at documents within that, these are the documents that we were looking at within that SharePoint site. I can visualize and access these documents and preview these documents right within my Outlook interface. Macroview, through its design, and I'm sure many of you are saying, well, that's a very rudimentary design, because this is all intentional. They've made it look like a Windows Explorer tree root view because it's very familiar to many users. It's very similar to my right-hand panel where I create folders within Outlook or folders within my directory structure within OneDrive. So I can simply navigate via tree structure, preview documents just by my mouse movements. But within this, just so I'm sitting within the human resources and documents, so let's see, we've got 50 documents here. I've also got a search bar here for find files, and this is within this folder. So if I wanted to find all the ESTT files, here they are here. So it quickly drills down. I can quickly get more focused within this just through this search feature that's built in. So I'm doing all these functions within Outlook. And that's well and good to just view all the information, but what if we want to really interact with all this? If I'm sitting in my inbox and an email comes in, and let's just, for example, say this Microsoft Store pre-order now email is relevant to something in my human resources area. So I want to save this. I can literally drag and drop that into the email folder through Outlook, and this is uploading this email into the human resources email section here. So that's already preloaded into the human resources site. So that would be right here. That's it. So just from simply dragging and dropping within my Outlook, I can easily file emails into any of these repositories, provided I've the proper authority and access to do so. Also with the Teams channels and also with OneDrive by simply dragging and dropping without leaving the Outlook program. For those familiar with document management and enterprise content management systems, this is the notion of email filing. What Macroview also provide is the ability to do luggage tagging or auto filing. So in this area here under the client communications atdocs controls and email section, what you're seeing is just a discussion thread where I've just sent emails from my Outlook email to Gmail. And what's different here, I've added to the subject line this tag. And this tag enables me to enables the system to auto-file any correspondence of this email into this area without me doing that manual intervention of dragging and dropping. And simply put, if I were to just demonstrate that, if I were to create a new email, send that to my Gmail account, call that filing test. I can add a tag, insert tag. These are tags that I've recently used, but I can search and I can just identify where I want that saved. In this case, I'll put it back into the @docs email area. Now I'll insert that subject line. So I send a test email. This email will just get sent to my Gmail account, but upon receiving that, it will auto-file into this area without me doing anything whatsoever. So let's see if that works here. Just waiting for this email to come through. There's my email. And you can see here it's already been categorized and says this email has been saved to SharePoint by managed filing. So that is automatically, upon receiving that email, save that into this repository, which is what we call my luggage tagging. If you know, those of you who use the likes of Net Documents, iManage, or the enterprise content management systems will be very familiar with that. So here's my filing test here. And there's the luggage tag that's been put. So anytime that email had been corresponded to, I might send that to Andy and he might send that to one of his colleagues, but not copy me in anymore on this correspondence. As long as that luggage tag is on there, the full discussion thread will be saved here. So this surpasses me saving these emails into my personal folder because I'm only getting the emails that are being sent or copied to me. Using this method, I'm getting the full discussion thread regardless whether I'm copied in or not. The other thing we could do here in terms of the visibility, let's just go back and have a look at these documents. So as we mentioned, we can preview these. If I right mouse click on this file, I can open it up natively. I can download it. I can take it offline and check it out. I can do all these document management system-like features to this document because it's keeping an audit of this. Now, if I were to create a folder in Outlook, in my Outlook folder, call it downloads, so there's nothing in there right now, and I needed a copy of this document, provided I had the rights to do so, I can literally drag that into my downloads folder, and now I have a copy of it. So there's the copy of that document now. That action, if you were to do this in the traditional sense, I'd have to go to the Human Resources Document SharePoint site, locate that document, download it, find out where I want to place that. But you can see here from a user's point of view, the whole experience is all drag and drop, very familiar to working within Internet Explorer. It's got that look and feel. So it's, in terms of being very intuitive to the users, they're used to this. So from a training point of view, their uptake is almost immediate. So you can see down the bottom here, I've also got browse, favorites, provided a favorite section because in this scenario, I've given 7 SharePoint sites, 7 team sites and 2 OneDrive sites. I'm sure in many organizations, some users might have an extensive list here of over 30 to 40 channels or sites. So they allow you to tag favorites so you can just work on the most relevant sites. So you can just have a more condensed, less busy view. Got my recent searches, just saves all the searches, but you also got a search bar here. But before we look at that search bar, I want to just introduce the other section that is provided within the Macroview product suite, and that is this interface here, which is the Macroview Document Management System Explorer. It's essentially what we saw on the right-hand side there, but without the noise of Outlook now. So if I wanted to just do searches and browse with much more white space, I can do so here. I can open up a document, bring that one over here. I can make an edit to that. Let's call it version 6. Save that. Close that, and it will ask me to check that document back in, because when I open that document from the Document Management System Explorer, that automatically locked that document. So it checked it out like a document management system. So yes, I will check that in. I can leave additional message. And that's checked back in. So when I refresh this, that document's gone back in, and you can see the version has changed as well. So that's just an example of how it transforms all this information and gives you this document management system capability and navigation. If I had the rights, I can move documents between sites. I can move this document here, for example, out of human resources and move that into events by simply dragging and dropping that. Obviously, you'd need to have some systems administration access to do that, or higher authorities, but that's moved that document between sites just simply by dragging and dropping in this tree structure. Sure, you can do that with the traditional methods of going between sites and looking at the sites, but I don't know for most of the folk on this call, but I think it really comes down to whether you're a digital native or a digital immigrant. Are you used to using tree root structure and navigating to information, or do you just like search? This gives you the best of both worlds, because as I mentioned, we have got the favorites, we've got recent activity, recent files that you've accessed, recent locations you've been to, but then you've got the whole search bar. So you can just do keyword searches directly from here. Let's look up, non-disclosure agreements that I've got access to. And that is searched the whole repository, all the SharePoint, Teams, and OneDrive that I have access to, and displayed all the non-disclosure documents across that suite. I can drill down even further and say, but I'm more interested in getting the non-disclosure agreement from Ross Connors. I might just put Ross in there, and it will just drill down further and find that one, find the documents or the non-disclosure documents to Ross. Invoices to Lance Smith. Lance Smith. So like I said, it gives you best of both worlds. If I like search and I don't like the whole tree root structure, I can just search like this. And this is a really good bridge to Copilot. If you're taking your users from a folder-like structure, taking that all away and just giving them Copilot, I think they'll get a little distressed of, well, where's this information coming from? I need to really know where it's come from and visualize, where I put it. It's whether you're a digital native or a digital immigrant, because how much paper files did you deal with in the past, and how many filing cabinets did you have, as opposed to, I don't even know what a filing cabinet is. That's people that do search. So that's a little bit on search. The other feature that we have within Macroview, this is just a rudimentary base product I'm showing you, but if you get to more advanced features, what I've created here is a legal scenario. So I can create matter files against a client. Let's call it CZL, might be a capital raising matter, or the document types within that, or also a litigation matter. It might be dispute resolution or a corporate takeover. So I've got all the different document types based on what that matter is. But the difference here, if I look into one of these document types, every document type, sure, it's sitting within the right folder across the right matter. But if I look at the properties of this file, you'll notice these have been auto tagged or auto classified with information like the document type is a contract, I'm the author. But if I look at the details now, you'll see there's more metadata there against this file than what your rudimentary file system has. We can see the matter name is ABC Corporate Takeover. The matter number is 1002. Status is active. Matter types and acquisition. You can apply all these different classifications on this file based on how you structure this tree roots. So any file that's copied into any of these categories, document types, will automatically adopt this metadata classification. It automatically applies the metadata tag. So if you've got a governance project where you need to start identifying sensitive information, for example, like personal identifiable information, PII, you could search for that, or perhaps even use Copilot to search for that. Create a structure, copy those documents into that structure in this nested folder structure, and whatever these folder labels are become metadata tags on that file, which will give you, when you search, I can do this rudimentary search here, but then now I can create much more specific search panels. So I can do it in a legal context, matter documents. So now I can be more specific because I've got files that have been classified and tagged. I can now ask, I want to see all the documents for matter number 1000, for example. And there are all the documents, but then I just want all the document types as contracts. So now we're getting more specific and more sophisticated with this document management system. We're kind of building it to be more like a legal document management system in this scenario. You're creating these profile fields aligned with your matters and your clients and your document types, similar to how you would ordinarily do that in iManage, NetDocuments, and all the enterprise content management systems. That's about as much as I want to show today. It is such a simple, easy to understand concept, but it is so configurable and so powerful. You can go from a base search and retrieve system to a more sophisticated document management system, as I'm showing you here. But this doesn't just stop as a legal document management system. It can become a project document management system, depending on what metadata you want to apply across the data to make that information and make it more relevant in the context of your use case. Macroview has got the capability of doing that, particularly without lifting and shifting and messing with all your information. I'll hand it back over to you, Andy.
Sounds good. Thank you, David. That was excellent, and I can see a lot of questions have come in as is usually the case when we run these demos, I think people quite quickly can visualize it in their environment almost and see how this might work. So there's a few questions here, and please do continue to post them in. We've got a few minutes to cover these. There's a couple I'll join together. So one is this available in New Outlook? And a kind of link question, is this available as a web add-in? So David, I don't know if you want to start there for us.
Yes, that's a very good question. Given that Microsoft is deprecating all the add-ins for classic Outlook and is pushing everyone towards New Outlook and Web Outlook,
Mhm.
this is also available in New Outlook and also Teams and Web Outlook. The version that they've come out with, it only came out late last year, is called DMS Next, Macroview DMS Next, and has got the
Mhm.
same capability.
Excellent. Thank you. Good stuff. That's a good answer on that one. Um, let's go back to the beginning. So a tag's auto created based on a subject.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Mhm. Okay, good stuff.
It's subject, folders, libraries, however you want to design your structure, it will just follow that. And it is essentially just a nested folder structure, as simple as that.
Yeah, good stuff. So the next question is quite interesting. I've got a lot of votes on this one as well. So is it possible to apply data retention policies against emails or other documents that are dragged or auto-saved to the various repositories?
Yes, you can. You can put data retention date fields as metadata, and then of
Mhm.
course you can search them. And then what I'd suggest there, because Macroview is just using the power of the 365 environment, you could use other products within your E3, E5 set to do, all your workflows. You
Yeah,
could use, AI. You could use your Copilot for your AI, Power Apps, etc. to
yeah.
to distill that information.
Completely agree. And yeah, I'd just add clearly the whole point of Macroview is it's the tool to add metadata to the files on SharePoint. You can still do everything you want to do on SharePoint with broader tool sets, as, based on the data that's now in those files. And that's the power of what this can do. Okay. If we're dragging an email to a folder, will it just copy the email, or can it permanently move and delete email?
Both. It could do however you want to configure it. Ideally, depending on who the organization is. If I were to drag that email out, obviously I'll lose it out of my inbox. So
Yeah,
I can only view it in that shared site then. But if that's what the business rule is, you can set it up to do that.
cool. Okay, there you go. It's your choice. If you move documents between sites, does the document history, I guess, remain and reflect that?
Yes, it's all in your audit logs. It's all in your SharePoint logs. Um,
Yeah,
like I said, this doesn't try to do anything over and above what's already available in your Microsoft stack. It's just leveraging off all that capability and making it much more usable to the user.
agreed. Very specific. Well, here we go. Is the search Boolean, and can you restrict the search down to only emails, PDFs, Word documents, etc.?
Yes, you can. There are document filters where it's all documents or just specific document types, and you can do Boolean search as well.
Good stuff. God blimey, we may run out of time on some of these questions. We've got quite a lot here now. Is the document ID unique across all the Teams channels and all the sites?
Um, that one we'll have to take offline.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Sometimes we can't answer them all, but
Yep.
we will. I should just say we will answer as many as we can here. If we can't get to your question, we will get you an answer. I think it's fair to say some of these we may have to take away. Are you able to show the search history? It only flashed up briefly.
Oh yes, you can go back and you can configure how deep you want the history to be retained. And it's similar to recent files. How many recent files do you want to just keep?
Yeah.
Search history, you can do much the same. So if you're doing complex searches, you can go back and call them up.
Good stuff. Does Macroview have an API to connect with retention schedules in real time?
Again, I think that's probably more of a Cocho question, Andy.
Yeah, I think it's probably linked to the wider question on does it integrate with Purview? And the answer is effectively yes, because ultimately the back end to this is your SharePoint and your OneDrive, etc. Ultimately, the data is still on the Microsoft stack, so the Microsoft tool sets still apply. And the ability to use the enhanced metadata is also then obviously something that kind of turbocharges that. So I think in summary, the answer is yes. But I think that's probably where we'll wrap up the Q&A because I'm conscious of time and just say, look, hopefully this has been a good taste for getting to see Macroview and the capabilities within it. If you do want to discuss this in more detail, please do reach out, get in touch. We can obviously jump on a call, go through things in more detail with you, and actually start to look at the much broader conversation to tailor the solution to your requirements. And in particular, the scope of this is obviously linked to Macroview, but Macroview is something that itself links to a broader conversation about Purview, data retention strategy, data security, and SharePoint structure, consulting, etc. So there's a lot we can do there. And look, that brings us neatly up to the 11:45 window. So look, hopefully today has been a really good introduction for you. And what we really are trying to do here is simplify document management for customers. So I think you can see how potentially this is a solution that will save considerable time for users in their daily lives. So thank you for joining us. And with that, we'll end the webinar there and look forward to speaking to you if you would like to discuss further.
Thank you all.
Thanks.